I have grown up on your bank, my red river. I have slept with you in the moonlit night. You have laid my bed with those white flowers. In the stormy night, in fury, I saw you eating the raw flesh of human corpse. Still you are my dear red river. I count your hidden treasures, those weapons of Ghiyasuddin, Juzbek, and 100 cannons of Mir Jumula. To protect me, you sang the lullaby. Oh, my red river, you flow like a blood that flows in my vein. My red river, you rip open my heart, and I don't know where you disappear inside.
An important part of Indira Goswami's childhood and youth were spent simply gazing at the Brahmaputra, more like a sea in its creative and destructive powers, yet stunning in visual beauty and poetic in the signification of eternity. The mind of any artist living here is moulded by the river, and so it was with Indira's sensibility. Indira Goswami chose to express herself in the idiom of narrative writing in the Assamese language. In her novels, sensory images are dense, so tactile, visual, and auditory that the text comes to life in pictures, touch, sound, smell, and even taste. She filters her ideas through her sensory perception. She is gifted with the talent to translate experience into words. Tantric traditions hold sway in parts of Kamrup. As a young girl, Indira was taken to the Vagala temple at Kamakhya, and a goat was sacrificed to propitiate the goddess, because when she was a child, an astrologer had said that her stars were so disastrously placed that it would be preferable that she be cut into pieces and thrown into the Brahmaputra.
You know, I never used to like sacrifice. When my mother was told that my planets are so bad, black goat has to be sacrificed in the temple of Bagala. Bagala is another manifestation of Kamakhya. So I was taken there, and as soon as I saw it is sacrificed, my mind totally think out from the Devi and everybody. Even in our house in South Kamrup, and there were very big feast used to take place where several goats were killed. You know, they used to dig a pit and put the head of the goat there and cover it with, in a very cruel way. I felt so bad that I started weeping. Then that red color, you know, that remained embedded in my heart for quite a long time. And always I used to feel that the tikka which was put on my forehead, and that part, some kind of pain I used to feel for a long time.
Ever since, Indira has campaigned against animal sacrifice at Kamakhya. She is appalled by cruelty to animals in general, and the red blood of the sacrifice goat in her memory seems to symbolize her position as a writer and as a human being. Indira, or Mamuni as she is affectionately known, developed these strong convictions when she grew up in Assam. Her very fine book on the 1984 anti-Sikh riots in Delhi, which she witnessed at first hand, is called Pages Stained with Blood. Here it was human, not animal blood that she saw spilt on the streets. A pivotal character in the book is a Sikh called Santokh Singh, an auto rickshaw driver and a friend who vanished after the riots.
It's a true character. In fact, many characters are true character here. Now, Santokh Singh, when I first joined the university, I had no car at that time, so Santokh Singh used to, take me in his three-wheeler. He died in the riot. Riot means he disappeared totally. Now, I have described his, about him and how he died into 2 paragraphs, and they are: 1984 চনৰ 13 নৱেম্বৰ মঙ্গলবাৰ পুৱা মানুহৰ হৈ হাল্লা আৰু চিঞৰ বাখৰত বিছনাৰ পৰা খৰমৰকৈ উঠি বহিলোঁ। বাহিৰলৈ ওলাই আহি দেখিলোঁ ইতিমধ্যে চটত শুই থকা কাইকাউচ তললৈ নামি আহিছে। ধপ ধপ শব্দ কৰি বিল্ডিঙৰ অনেক মানুহ তললৈ নামি আহিল। মই উধাটো খাই তলৰ গোল চক্ৰলৈ চালোঁ। তলৰ গোল চক্ৰত লোকাৰণ্য হৈ পৰিছে। পুলিচৰ গাড়ী এখন মানুহৰ ভিৰৰ মাজত পুত গৈ আছে। মানুহৰ চিঞৰ বাখৰ স্পষ্ট কাণত পৰি লাছ পৰি আছে। মই তললৈ হেফাই ফুফাই নামি আহিলোঁ। বেদজিৰ দোকানৰ ওচৰত এটা আৱাজ শুনিলোঁ, मैडम लौट जाइए, आप देखा नहीं पाओगी, उन्होंने कसाई को भी माफ़ किया, लेकिन यहाँ क्यों फेंक गया? अरे भाई, जगह जगह लाश मिला है। हठाৎ এটা আৱাজ লোহাৰ ত্ৰিশূলৰ দৰে বুকুৰ মাজত মোৰ সোমাই পৰিল। यह संतोष सिंह की लाश है। संतोष सिंह की लाश। ভৰিৰ তলৰ পৃথিৱীখন যেন বহু দূৰলৈ আঁতৰি গ'ল। কাইকাউচে মোৰ বাহুত ধৰি ওপৰলৈ লৈ আহিল। মই আৰু আগুৱাই যাব নোৱাৰিলোঁ।
Images stained in color, like the red of violence, shape her memory and her writing. Earlier, when Indira went to do research for her doctorate at Vrindavan, she describes in vivid colors the appalling condition of widows in that city of God.
My mother was not at all happy to send me to Vrindavan and the place which they think that it is a discarded place. It is for the widows who were discarded. People will think that you have gone there because you are a widow. But then gradually what happened, I went, I liked the place so much, I have written one of my important novels.
One of Indira's best-known novels, Neelkanthi Braj, is based on the lives of these widows. Writers and critics have described the book as the finest documentation on Hindu widows written in an Indian language. What is emphasized in the book is the way women, young and old, were discouraged from all sensory feeling in order that they remain celibate.
The very day when I reached Vrindavan, I wanted to come back. I thought I cannot stay here. It is not possible. I have to go back. But then, next day in the morning, and after coming back from the Institute of Oriental Philosophy, everything became so natural, so easy, and everything became so bright all of a sudden. That agony for which I wanted to go back was no more. This is a great experience for me. And Vrindavan gave me ample of wisdom.
This ability to distance herself from her subject and yet be powerfully sensuous in his literary creation can only come from deep and painful personal experience. Indira's husband, Madhavan Raisam, was an engineer who built bridges. He worked on the Brahmaputra Bridge, which is when she met him, and her memories of their marriage defines some of the visual imagery in her writing. She travelled with him to Kutch in Gujarat and to Kashmir. Her life in difficult terrain on location was invaluable for a writer. She saw at first hand the exploitation of workers at the construction sites where her husband worked, and the experiences resulted directly in at least 3 important novels: The Stream of Chenab, Ahiran, and The Rusted Sword, a novel which won her the Sahitya Academy Award.
Well, that was the happiest part of my life when I stayed with my husband in Saurashtra, Kutch, for the first time. Then I went to Kashmir. And as a person, I have never met anyone like Madhu before. He had a great personality. He had enough knowledge. Besides being an engineer, he used to love literature. All these are embedded in me, and suddenly losing him, it was something which till now I could not cope with. So automatically pain becomes subject of your writing. So I wrote the Neelkanthi Braj. the widows of Vrindavan. I saw their terrific life, And my heroine there is myself only, Sodamini. I have molded my feeling, I have given her my own feeling when I lost my husband, what happens to me, how I, suddenly breaking out from that life, what kind of mental agony I suffered. Everything I have poured out in her.
As a child, Indira was always intensely curious, totally absorbed in anything she was exposed to. So when she was sent to Pine Mount School in Shillong, it was a new adventure. For a family steeped in the Brahminical tradition of Assam, the convent school ambience of Pine Mount was a bit of a culture shock. But for Indira, it was a whole new world, and she became fascinated with the image of Christ.
My father used to tell me that you have to learn Bible. You have to enhance your knowledge. So I attended the classes. I used to get very good marks, and I felt totally with Christ. And one day I told my father that I was very young, about 10, 11 or so. And I told my father that I want to become a Christian. And he said that not now. You have to read other scriptures also. You have to read Quran, Muslims' great holy book. And so about Hinduism, you don't know anything. You are very young. So later on, if you feel that you like Christianity, you will. But not now. So I still remember that conversation with my father because of Christ, whom I liked him. He sacrificed his life. Even that part where his clothes, blood-stained clothes, were taken out by his enemy, that is also blood.
It is easy to see how symbolism becomes a vital literary device when used creatively by a writer like Indira Goswami. The characters she creates innately possess notions like sacrifice. For example, the Baptist missionary Mark Sahib, an important character in Indira's best-known novel, The Moth-Eaten Howdah of Ataska, is a person who sacrifices. Similarly, the widows of Vrindavan and the victims of the anti-Sikh riots also sacrifice their lives. Then later in the novel, other literary symbols occur, like that of decadence and decay. The book is about a Satara, an Assamese institution that was originally social and religious, but over time became feudal and oppressive, particularly towards widows. Just as the howdah of an elephant might look grand from outside but was moth-eaten from within, so the Satara looked triumphant from without but was actually in a state of decay.
Datal Hatir Uyakwa Howdah, it gives you a more coherent, experience of reality. Mamanira Goswami, she has this kind of visual and sensuous richness of detail because she immerses herself in the experiences that she presents to us. And such is the intensity of her sensuous awareness that the things lose their inertness, their ordinariness. They become imaginative, symbolic visions in themselves.
7, 2, 7, 8, 8, 5, 7, 9.
The personality of Indira Goswami is an open book, or perhaps an open wall, and her mind, her literary and intellectual preferences are eclectic. When Indira went to do her PhD on the Ramayana in Vrindavan, the symbolism associated with Christ transferred itself into the symbolism of Lord Rama. Today, Dr. Goswami is an authority on interpolations that have taken place over the centuries on the text of the Ramayana.
You'll be surprised to know Ramayana never interested me for several reasons, because of there are many points which in a very young age I didn't like Sambuk Bad. Sambuk is a lower caste fellow who was not allowed to study Veda. That's why Rama, he killed him. Then this disfigurement of Surpanakha, that point I didn't like. Banishment of Sita, I didn't like. I met Father Kamil Bulke. He is a very well-known scholar on Ramayana. He's a Jesuit father, hail from Belgium. Then what happened, Father taught me very thoroughly about the interpolations. Then he said, see, Indira, you don't like these episodes, but these are all interpolated. These are not written by Valmiki. Some book bird is later interpolated. It exists only in Dakshinatya edition, not in Gauriya or Paschimottarya. So again, this banishment of Sita, it was not written by Valmiki at all. It is later interpolations. You find out real Valmiki, that will be your study.
An important part of the technique of a novelist is to establish a point of view from which the story is told. Perhaps this method of a writer helps Indira to investigate the various interpolations in the many versions of the Ramayana. For instance, the vast difference between the Madhav Kandali and Tulsidas versions.
Madhav Kandali has shown Rama as a human being. He weeps when he thinks that he will have to leave Sita and go for exile. He weeps saying that Suragana Munira Gandharvara Manohare Beho dekhi kimote manuse monodhare. Jibante mritakmoy tukapori horu gole khila bandhiya hagore jhamp koru. Sita, I feel like when I think about leaving you, I feel like tying a stone on my neck and drowning myself in the ocean. He is so much, he has come down to that level of the incarnation of Vishnu to human being. Even Sita, she was so much a human being. She is not a mother earth or incarnation of Lakshmi. She even says that Sampaka kulika jeno, muhur kolebor, lundi ghundi asilaha jeheno bhramor, jebe asi bikokito hoilo phulo phol, upobhugo erikeno karaha nispol. Oh Rama, you are enjoying my body like a Brahmar. Now it is blooming and you are leaving me. Now no goddess will say such a thing. On the other hand, if I compare this thing with Tulsidas, there is a vast difference. Tulsi was, always alert that he is picturing the incarnation of Vishnu, not even Vishnu, Param Brahma. So even to describe Sita, who is Mahalakshmi, he was hesitant, he felt delicate, and that's why he said, Jagadamba, Rupa Guna Anupama, Upama Hamuha Muhe Lagoi Jutari, Koi Patotori Videha Kumari. All their similes have become stale. With what simile I will compare the Mother Earth? So he was conscious every moment. There was difference between the two Ramayanas.
Indira Goswami is one of the most respected intellectuals associated with Delhi University, at which academic institution she has spent many of the most fruitful years of her life. Clearly, she is not just a wonderfully skillful novelist, but a fine researcher, original thinker, and gifted teacher and academic.
Now, we know Mamanirasam Goswami as a novelist, but you should not forget that she is also an equally gifted short story writer. There too, she is very bold in unfolding her themes, just as in her novels. And at the same time, she is very much concerned with the art of the short story. Now, it is this fusion of art as well as of life that raised her short story into the level of the very best short stories of India.
In a short story called The Offspring, Indira tells of a wealthy village man called Pitambar who lives with an invalid wife. He has a relationship with the widow of a priest of the Satara, a woman called Damayanti, in order to get a son and legal heir. But when Damayanti gets pregnant, she aborts and buries the fetus. However, Pitambar is so obsessed with an heir, he goes to her garden and starts digging for his child. You can almost hear the digging. So consciously does Indira use sound as a literary device.
দময়ন্তীয়ে ভয়ত ঠক ঠককৈ কঁপিব ধৰিলে। কি কৰে মানুহটোৱে? আটাহ পাৰিব নেকি তাই বাৰু? তাই ঘৰতে কি কাণ্ড ঘটিছে? মহাজন নাই কোনো ভ্ৰূক্ষেপ নাই। হুতুৰ হুতুৰ হুতুৰ। মহাজন কিয় কান্দিছা? পিতাম্বৰ মহাজনে খিৰিকীৰ পিনে এবাৰ উভতি চালে, কিন্তু কোনো উত্তৰ নিদিলে। আকৌ হুতুৰ হুতুৰ হুতুৰ। হাহাকাৰ কৰি উঠিল দময়ন্তীয়ে। হয়, মই পুতি থৈছোঁ সঁচা কথা, কিন্তু কি পাবি তাত? মাংসপিণ্ড এটাহে পৰি আছে। পিতাম্বৰ মহাজনে মূৰ তুলি চাই ক'লে, মোৰ সন্তান আছিল, মই মাংসপিণ্ডৰ টুকুৰাকে চুই চাম। মই মোৰ এই দুখন হাতেৰে মোৰ বংশধৰক চুই চাম। Here I brought the sound for Mahajan, because there was a turmoil in his heart, and that heart, as if somebody is sparing the thing, digging his heart, removing his flesh. So this type of images comes to me very often, and they are very powerful motifs in my writing.
Indira records every bit of imagery in her own life, no matter how traumatic, and converts it to literary metaphor. Perhaps this is what V.S. Naipaul meant when he said, after he handed her the Bharatiya Gyanpith Award 2000, that every writer records his or her personal life for literary use. But Indira also brings with it, and in minutely sensuous detail, the geography, the history, and the religion of her land. Elaborating what she loves about Assam, she describes it as Jogolia Nodi Motia Pahar. It is a description in Assamese that evokes childhood memories of the land that nurtured her, memories which form the primary ingredients of her creative energy. She remembers, as if it were yesterday, the smells and tastes of her childhood. The elephant that her family owned, the mahout who took her on that elephant, the pungent smell of the opium that the mahout smoked, and even the taste of it.
তাৰ মুখলৈ মই বৰ হেঁপাহেৰে চাই আছিলোঁ। কেতিয়াবা সি মোৰ মুখলৈ মূৰ তুলি চাইছিল। তাৰপিছত অনুকম্পাত গদগদ হৈ কৈছিল, খাবি নেকি মাইচানা? মই তাৰ সেই বিচিত্ৰ চিলিমত সোপা মাৰিছিলোঁ। কাহি কাহি আধ্যায় হোৱাৰ কথা মনত আছে। হয়, মই নিশ্চয় সোপা মাৰিছিলোঁ। That was the first time I have tasted the opium, sitting almost in his lap. And the reaction was terrible. Probably, I was coughing whole half of the day. And my parents, when they have come to know about it, I had a crushing like into both myself and the mahout.
In later years, such childhood experiences got converted to literary motif. Indira Goswami is a writer out of residence. Ever since her stay in Vrindavan, she has lived in Delhi as an academic, first as a lecturer in Assamese at the Department of Modern Indian Languages and Literary Studies, then professor, and then the first lady head of department. Is this distance an advantage for a writer? After all, Indira wrote her classic novel, The Moth-Eaten Howdah of the Tusker, in Delhi.
I wrote this novel after 30 years, sitting in Delhi. Everybody was asking me, how is that you are here, even the Kamrupi dialect you have written so well, there's no mistake. I told them, see, the distance purifies one's feeling. And it happened to me. I could see every scene in such a transparent way that probably if I would have stayed there, probably I could not have written like that. The imagination played, imagination means mixed with truth, played a very strong part. And there is always an agony when you have separated from your very dear one there. And agony always, it is like an ornament in the language.
Lovers of literature are fortunate that the suggestion of the astrologer of Indira's childhood, that she be cut up and thrown into the Brahmaputra, was not actually carried out. As Indira's friend Amrita Pritham, the great Punjabi novelist, once observed, perhaps this astrologer had seen just one half of Indira's birth chart. The other half was hidden until it was revealed by her literary talent.